You know, when you look at Mount Rushmore, it's just staggering. It's so big, so iconic, it almost feels like it wasn't made by people at all, but was just found that way. But the real story, the one hiding behind those faces, is one of the most incredible engineering feats of the 20th century. Okay, let's get into it. I mean, it's true, right? The faces seem to just emerge from the granite. There's this organic feel to it that makes you completely forget you're looking at a sculpture. It doesn't look like someone painstakingly chipped it away.
And that's where this story just takes a wild turn, because this thing wasn't carved by artists in a studio with delicate little chisels. Nope. It was blasted out of a mountain by a team of gold miners, guys who had zero artistic training, using jackhammers and actual dynamite.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth did they do it? How do you take a 5-foot-tall model and scale it up to a 60-foot-tall cliff face with that kind of precision, all while hanging hundreds of feet in the air? Well, the answer is this brilliant mix of ancient tech and modern-day ingenuity.
But before we get into the incredible how, we've got to understand the why. See, the whole idea for Mount Rushmore didn't start with some grand artistic dream. It actually came from something way more practical. South Dakota needed to get on the map.
So, picture this. It's the 1920s, and South Dakota, well, it's not exactly a tourist hotspot. A state historian named Doane Robinson comes up with this wild idea. Let's carve a giant sculpture to get people to visit. He brings in this sculptor, Gutzon Borglum, who decides to go big with national figures, and in 1925, he finds the perfect canvas.
Borglum created this super detailed model, and here's the key to the whole thing. It was built to a perfect 1:12 scale. That meant every single inch on his model would equal one whole foot on the actual mountain. That precise ratio was everything, but it was also the project's biggest engineering headache.
And man, what a canvas he picked. We're talking about a sheer 500-foot-tall cliff face made of solid granite. It was actually perfect for carving, but it was also completely and totally inaccessible. Before they could remove a single piece of rock, they had to solve a huge logistical puzzle.
So that leads us to the next giant hurdle. Before they could even think about carving a monument, they first had to basically build an entire workshop right there on the side of a mountain.
First things first, they had to carve a road just to get people and gear to the site. Then they built a whole village at the base, workshops, a blacksmith, even housing. A massive staircase had to be built to get to the top, and then a cable car to haul up all the heavy tools. And finally, a winch house to lower the workers down the cliff face in these tiny little seats. All of that just to get to day one.
Okay, so with the worksite finally ready, the team could get down to business, shaping the mountain. And they did it with controlled explosions and tools powered by compressed air. The carving itself was this really cool two-step process. Step 1, dynamite. They used carefully placed charges to blast away about 90% of the rock they needed to remove, leaving this rough, kind of egg-shaped head. Then came phase 2, the fine details, which workers carved using these heavy 30-kilogram jackhammers. And get this, all of it was powered by 3 huge air compressors at the base, pushing air up a pipe almost half a mile long to the top.
And you have to remember, these guys weren't sculptors, they were miners. They were dangling hundreds of feet in the air, learning on the job how to control these bone-rattling machines. Their skill and just sheer guts were as important as any piece of equipment they had.
Okay, but that brings us to the biggest question of all. The workers had the tools, they had the courage, but with no artistic background, how in the world did they know exactly where to drill?
The answer to this is just pure genius. I mean, it's not like Borglum could just project an image onto the mountain's complex, bumpy surface. He needed a way to perfectly transfer thousands of data points from his small model to that giant cliff. And to do it, he looked to a piece of ancient technology.
He found his inspiration in an ancient Greek tool called a pointing machine. Artists had used it for centuries to make perfect, one-to-one scale copies of statues by measuring and then transferring key points. But Borglum's challenge was different. He didn't want a copy. He needed to scale up. Way up.
And this is where Borglum's true genius shines. He completely reinvented the machine. Instead of just transferring measurements, his system was all about mathematical conversion. It was designed from the ground up to take a measurement from the small model and scale it up by a factor of exactly 12 for the mountain.
And the method was just beautiful in its simplicity. They built a giant pointing machine on top of the model and an even bigger one on top of the mountain. They'd measure a point on the model, let's say the tip of the nose. They'd get its angle, its horizontal distance, and its vertical distance from a central point. Then they just multiplied those three numbers by 12, and that gave them the new scaled-up coordinate on the mountain, telling the workers exactly where to drill and exactly how deep to go.
Using this system, the team worked for 14 years, slowly bringing those four faces to life with just incredible detail. But as amazing as it is today, the monument you see is actually an unfinished masterpiece.
Borglum even came up with these amazing techniques for realism. Take the eyes, for example. On a big sculpture, they can look kind of flat and lifeless, so he drilled a deep hole for the pupil to create a shadow. Then, and this is the best part, he left a small square pillar of granite right in the middle. From a distance, that tiny detail catches the light and gives the impression of a lifelike glint in the eye. It's just brilliant.
And you know, the original plan was even bigger, way bigger. It called for the presidents to be carved all the way down to their waists. Borglum had even started work on a secret chamber inside the mountain called the Hall of Records, which was supposed to hold important American documents. There was even a final finishing process called bumping that would have smoothed and whitened the whole surface. But after 14 years, with about 400 workers on the job, the project came to a sudden halt. World War II broke out, and all the federal funding and the nation's attention got diverted to the war effort. The project was simply declared complete, just as it was.
So while it may be technically unfinished, its legacy as an artistic and engineering marvel is just undeniable. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other incredible masterpieces of human ingenuity are hiding their engineering right there in plain sight?